Fall is upon us, so let's take a look back at the spook of the summer.
I got mama, 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 mama. Hey, from
me! No silly, not Front Room, the A24 flop starring Brandy.
M-E-double-S, miss. I'm an M-E-double-S, miss.
Mr. Lodge.
That movie was an M-E-double-S mess.
Here, kitty, kitty, kitty.
Can you believe it?
Here, kitty, kitty, kitty.
We aren't talking about Strange Darling either, because even though it was great, nobody saw it. We're talking about Longlegs. Its viral marketing campaign helped earn it Neon's highest opening weekend box office and helped it go on to become their highest grossing film as of 2024. But I'm not here to talk about numbers. I'm here to figure out if every film buff on the internet is right. Is Longlegs just a ripoff of Kiyoshi Kurosawa's Cure? Maybe. Probably not intentionally, but let's find out. Kiyoshi Kurosawa's Cure was released in 1997 and follows Kenichi Takabe, a detective investigating a mysterious series of inexplicable murders committed by seemingly sane people who suddenly break and kill someone close to them, be they a coworker or a spouse. All of these deaths would be treated as unrelated, except for the fact that the violent individual drew, cut, or created a cross somewhere at the crime scene, leading the investigation to believe it is a serial killing. Turns out it's a hypnotist with magic flames. But more about that later. Osgood Perkin's Longlegs was released in 2024 and follows Lee Harper, a detective investigating a mysterious series of inexplicable murders committed by seemingly sane fathers who suddenly break and kill their families, usually a wife and daughter. All of these deaths would be treated as unrelated except for the fact that a coded letter is left at every crime scene, leading the investigators to believe it is a serial killing. Turns out, it's Nicolas Cage who can use magic dolls to hypnotize people, but more on that later. Okay, I know it's not fair for me to reread the same synopsis, but you can see where people are seeing the similarities. I haven't gotten this much hate since I said Across the Spider-Verse and the Flash movie had the same exact plot, except one of them was actually finished. But just ignore I said that. I can't have the Spider fans coming for my ass. So the biggest connection between the two films is that they involve a killer who utilizes a form of hypnosis in order to make seemingly normal people commit horrible acts of violence. Both killers are driven by an ideology. The killer in Cure is primarily targeting middle working class individuals and hypnotizes them into suddenly snapping and killing someone close to them. Longlegs only targets families, creating dolls with the ability to drive a father to commit heinous acts to his wife and child. It's also heavily suggested the father figures do more to their daughters with extremely upsetting SA theming.
When she's sleeping, it's the best time to do it. When her eyes are closed.
Sir, can you stay on the line with me?
By simply observing the victims of each film, we can instantly determine a tonal difference between the two works. The deaths in Cure are seemingly disconnected from any emotional connection. Kurosawa stated in an interview that he wanted to show how perfectly sane individuals could suddenly snap and commit a horrible act of violence.
彼は恐ろしい殺人鬼がもともと恐ろしい殺人鬼で、そういう人間がごく平凡な人間のふりをしていたのではなくて、もともと本当に普通の平凡な人間で良い人間だった。しかし何かのきっかけでいきなり人を殺してしまった。
These individuals are strewn all through Cure, from a frustrated businessman at a local laundromat who is at his breaking point To the actual lead of the film, who swings from emotionally distraught about his wife's mental well-being to being horribly frustrated with her incompetence. From her constant need to keep the dryer running to the moment she serves him raw meat, it feels as though the lead could snap at her at any moment. These moments suffuse the film with an unrelenting tension that parallels the economic insecurity of Japan during the late 90s. Every element of Cure seems to be commenting on the societal frustration and disillusion after the shock of the economic bubble burst. The victims of Longlegs are drastically different, primarily women and children. The deaths are always tied to domestic violence, with fathers taking the lives of those they should love the most. As an audience, we are naturally more inclined to find these acts horrific, whereas the deaths in Cure may be more perplexing. Think CSI versus Hannibal. One of them's a lot more spooky. It becomes a matter of comparing a text that focuses on intellectual conflict versus one that focuses on emotional conflict. That isn't to say Cure doesn't utilize emotion in its narrative. I just rambled on about how emotional repression creates the majority of the tension. Instead, we are looking at the theming of Longlegs' domestic abuse versus Cure's use of underlying societal unease and aggression. Longlegs focuses on the occult and Christian superstition, whereas Cure focuses on the human psyche and what we repress. This again is where we have our other major difference. Longlegs presents almost all of its information textually directly to the audience, whereas Cure layers in its ideas subtextually. A copy of Helm and Barr's Bluebeard and its Jungian analysis, connections between Franz Mesmer and Japanese superstition, none of these are ever actually discussed in the movie. It's entirely possible to watch Cure and miss the intentions behind themes, which is not the case with Longlegs, a movie in which Perkins hit over 12 different shots of the spooky devil.
Get out of the way, Hitler! You're ruining my entrance! Go!
But just saying the devil made me do it would be doing a disservice to Longlegs and the film that Perkins has crafted. However, to analyze the deeper inspirations for the film, we have to spoil some stuff. So this is going to be your official spoiler warning for both movies. Here on out, I'm talking about the ending revelations from both films, so go watch them if you're still curious. They're both pretty good. So the big spoiler for Longlegs, the third act twist, is that Lee Harper's mother has been Longlegs' accomplice since Lee's childhood. And in order to protect her daughter from him, the mother agreed to deliver his hypnotic dolls and continue this cycle of domestic violence. Lee's memory of her childhood are seemingly erased by her own demonic doll, which contains a metal satanic orb buried in its head. The childhood PTSD memory repression is directly parallel with these dolls, copies of the victims who repress their traumatic interactions now in steel ball orbs. You know, Perkins, I bet a lot of people would pay money if they could have a doll that would just sort of sap away all of their PTSD. We do get to see one of these orbs explode as Lee's mother shotguns her daughter's doll, releasing a black fog. Lee feels betrayed by her mother, and a new antagonist enters the fray for the finale, revealing the true themes behind Longlegs. Both Nicolas Cage and Oz Perkins were heavily influenced by their own mothers, an influence that can be directly seen on the screen. Cage sat down with Extra to discuss his inspiration.
What did you draw from?
Well, it was interesting because when Oz Perkins, the director, sent me the script and I met with him, he said, "This is a movie about my mom," which isn't what you expect to hear from a director of a horror film. And I said, "Well, that's interesting, Oz, because when I was reading this character, it became about my mom. I heard her voice. She wasn't satanic, but she went through a lot.
As such, Cage used his late mother, Joy Vogelsang, I'm so sorry if I butchered that, to help build his Longlegs characterization. Vogelsang died in 2021 at the age of 86.
And I heard her voice and the way she would move, and suddenly I thought, I could put all that into this character. That was an inspiration. If I'm any good in the movie, I owe it to my mom.
Cage took the troubles that his mother experienced with dementia and channeled it into his character. This gives the killer a strange sense of paternal nature throughout the film.
There she is.
He creates the dolls for the girls, believing them to be gifts. He is gifting them a connection with his savior, Satan.
Are we going to the hooky low? The hooky low.
A more pressing paternal connection is that of Lee herself. Longlegs has lived in her family home since she was a little girl, a home devoid of a father figure, which is seemingly filled by Longlegs. He speaks to her of her youth, memories she can't recall, a version of herself she has entirely erased. Perkins takes this a step further by integrating the cryptography and iconography tied to Longlegs and places it in the subconscious of the audience during the first act of the film.
Door, mother, father.
Perkins himself is a fascinating figure. He discussed his inspiration for the dolls with Screen Rant, the tragic murder of JonBenet Ramsey.
It's the haunting last video of little JonBenet Ramsey singing Rocking Around the Christmas Tree. The date is December 22nd, 1996, just 3 days before she was brutally murdered. She's performing at a local mall where she plays a toy saxophone and gets a warm round of applause from the shoppers. Tragically, JonBenet would be murdered at Christmas, her happiest time of the year.
The murder took place approaching Christmas, and one present the parents had gotten for JonBenet was a life-sized replica doll of herself.
JonBenet got a doll for Christmas, right?
Patsy had sent the doll company a picture of JonBenet, and they made a doll that supposedly looked like her. Patsy saw the doll lying in the box. She said it looked like JonBenet was in a coffin.
It was in a cardboard box in the basement 15 feet from where she was killed. And there was something so insane about that, I had to catalog it away.
20 years later, we are still looking for answers. Who killed JonBenet?
But JonBenet Ramsey wasn't the only one with a tragic life. The entire Perkins family seemingly provided inspiration. His father was the famous Anthony Perkins, star of Hitchcock's Psycho as a meek hotel manager.
She just goes a little mad sometimes. We all go a little mad sometimes.
Anthony's success saw him marry Barry Berenson.
The next year, on The Mike Douglas Show, she described how they met.
I was doing interviews for Interview magazine at the time, and I asked him if I could go down and interview him. That was one of the pictures from the interview when we first met.
They'd raised 2 kids, Oz and Elvis.
She was so very supportive and so very loving to both my brother and myself. At times, almost too bright a light. When we came along, she put the camera down mostly, and we became like her life, essentially.
But just like his character in Psycho, Anthony Perkins had a secret double life, that of a queer man. In an interview for People magazine, Perkins talked about his father's double life and how it inspired Longlegs. Everything that I try to do, I try to make it about myself from the beginning, he explained. What's the simple truth that I can use as a kind of North Star? In my case, I grew up in a household with a very famous, visible father who was living 2 lives at least and was a closeted homosexual or bisexual man. His mother, Barry Berenson, shielded him from the truth about his father, an act that inspired the mother in Longlegs to shield her daughter from the truth. Your mother can protect you from a truth that she thinks is unsavory, reflected Osgood, and then you just build out a crazy movie around that.
AIDS Our best defense against AIDS is education. Fight the fear of AIDS with the facts.
Anthony Perkins died at the age of 60 in 1992 after a battle with HIV and AIDS. His death revealed the truth behind what was happening, and the truth that Barry once tried to shield her sons from could no longer be denied. Perkins left one final morbid note on his deathbed. I chose not to go public about having AIDS because, to misquote Casablanca, I'm not much at being noble, but it doesn't take much to see that the problems of one old actor don't amount to a hill of beans in this crazy world. If all that wasn't enough...
20 years ago, on September 11th, Berenson Perkins was heading home aboard Flight 11 when she died at the World Trade Center.
Berenson was on the plane that crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center, and her name is now written at North Pole on panel N76. Whether or not the unfortunate deaths of his parents were direct inspirations on Longlegs, they still helped to define Perkins as he is now, infusing the movie with a sense of queer guilt and the tragedy it can create with all involved. The actions of Lee's mother and the double life of committing horrible acts in order to shield her child from the truth are events that Perkins took directly from his own mother. The true horror was never the father figure, it was never Longlegs or the queer actions of Anthony Perkins, it was the mother, the individual so ashamed, so convinced she knew what was right for her children, that she denied them of the truth that they needed to heal.
I'm doing this for you. Just like I've always done.
And also probably Satan.
It's not about them! It's all about me!
Cure is less about personal demons and more about demons that lurk within all of us. I guess those could be personal too. The opening scene of Cure follows the lead's wife, Fumie, as she attends her weekly checkup. She has an unspecified memory disorder that plagues her throughout the film and creates a subliminal tension between her and her husband. But the most fascinating and revealing element of the scene isn't the checkup itself. It's a small novella that Fumie picks up off the table. At first, she seems not to remember the book or its ending until it hits her. She has read this book, at which point she delivers the final line of the scene.
娘は最後には青ひげを殺してしまうんです。
The book is Blaubart, or Bluebeard in English. The copy she holds is written by Helmut Blars, and is actually a combination of the story and Jungian analysis of said story. This copy of the book is seemingly only available in German, and I ordered a copy to satiate my curiosity, as it would reveal much about Kurosawa's intention behind character motivations and his overall commentary. For those unaware of the story of Bluebeard, here's the Sparknotes version. Please note that there are multiple variations of the story, and I'm only summarizing the one presented in the book. A beautiful young girl is out walking when she is approached by a grand carriage. Inside the carriage is a man with a blue beard. He promises her riches and a life of luxury if she comes to stay at his castle. Her poor father has many children and encourages his daughter to go with the wealthy man despite hesitance from her siblings. The young girl goes to his castle nonetheless and is greeted by everything she could ever want.
Josephine was filled with joy as she took in all the splendor around her.
Beautiful jewelry, fine dresses, and more food than she had ever seen. All seems perfect.
There must be hundreds of doorways, and every doorway's painted the same pretty color. Huh? I wonder why this door's a different color. That's very intriguing. May I take a peek inside?
No! That room is not important.
Until Bluebeard tells her that he must leave for a few days. He gives her a bundle of keys to the castle and tells her that she can go into any room.
However, this is the key to a room which must never be opened. I forbid it. Can I trust you with this key?
She is pleased with everything she has and promises not to go into the room.
Josephine, with keys in hand, began to explore the castle.
It's wonderful. All the money in the world must be stored here. This is how a princess should always look.
It only takes a couple of days before curiosity gets the best of her.
I have opened up all the other rooms except the one I am most curious about.
And she has to go in the room. Behind the door, she finds shelves lined with the decapitated heads of Bluebeard's previous wives. She panics and sends for her siblings, hoping they will arrive before Bluebeard gets back. She is not so lucky, as he arrives soon after and is furious upon finding out she has gone into the forbidden room.
You have broken your word, Josephine. Now you must pay as did the others for disobeying me.
Oh, please!
He chases her through the castle, hell-bent on beheading her like he has his previous wives. Suddenly, the young girl's elder brothers break into the castle and behead Bluebeard.
Josephine!
Where are you?
At which point the young girl and her family claim the castle and its riches for their own. The end. I can't wait for the Disney version. This is just one version of the ending. There are others where the young girl is accompanied by her sisters to the castle and is the only one not to suspect him, yet still tempted by her sister's words and the key. And of course there's another one where the young girl is beheaded by Bluebeard and becomes yet another victim of her own curiosity.
Nachts fand ich die Vierte endlich unter nächtlich klaren Sterne.
Like any fairy tale, it's a reflection of the time it was created. The stories and their endings change constantly based on the standards of the time. Bluebeard is a particularly interesting case because it was heavily adopted by Jungian psychologists as an example of what Jung called the predator. The predator is an archetype that still prevails in modern culture, the mysterious, handsome stranger who seems to be hiding some deep, dark secret. Edward Cullen, Christian Grey, that guy from the serial killer show where all the women think he's hot.
Say it out loud. Say it.
Vampire.
Individuals who have a deep, dark secret that the female character wants to unearth and be a part of. Jung believed that we all have a predator buried deep within us, but these traits would become amplified in certain individuals, particularly men. The young girl desires to know more about the mysterious stranger and is willing to lose everything to uncover the truth, to delve into the psyche of the man she seemingly loves. It comes from a natural desire to understand the thoughts and feelings of your partner, an individual you spend your entire life with but can never truly know. Instead, you must trust that the persona they present to you is their true self, and that they don't hide some deep dark secret behind a locked door. Kurosawa's Cure purports that we all have this violent being inside of us, this predator, and it only takes a trigger, in this case a hypnotist, to draw it out of us. However, that isn't what makes Cure so fascinating. It's the relationship between Kenichi the detective and Mamiya the killer. Mamiya makes multiple comparisons between himself and the detective.
あんたあの連中とは違う。 あんたは俺の言葉の本当の意味を理解できる人間だ。
Mamiya is aware of the predator lurking inside every human being, aware of his own predator, and releases it willingly on others. He is a being who sort of travels to and fro without memories and has shed everything that Young would consider an archetype or a persona. Detective Kenichi is seemingly aware of his own predator as well, but tries to maintain the facade of normalcy.
頭のいかれた女房がいたんじゃ、刑事も型なしだな。仕事と私生活の顔をきっちり分ける。それがあんたのやり方だ。刑事のあんたと夫としてのあんた、どっちが本当のあんたなんだ。どっちも本当のあんたじゃないよな。本当のあんたはどこにもいない。
あ、そうだよ。女房は俺の重荷だ。お前に言われなくても分かってんだよ、そんなことは。あんな女房の面倒を一生面倒見なきゃいけないんだよな。
すごいじゃない。
The predator we hide is only socially acceptable when it is released in a situation we deem worthy. The brothers at the end of Bluebeard also release the predator within, but they do so in order to save their sister, and are therefore treated as heroes. Kurosawa discussed his ending with IGN by stating, "In Cure, the conflict between the protagonist and the society that surrounds him. What essentially happens at the conclusion is he finds complete freedom by cutting himself off from society." That is the main conclusion I am trying to posit. Kenichi has funneled his predator into this work, the hunt for killers, and it has consumed him to the point he practically resents his mentally unstable wife, his job, and all of society. These are the actual antagonists to Detective Kenichi. However, it is never something that he has the words or concept to understand until he meets Mamiya, a meeting that allows him to see the true horrors within. The concept of the repressed predator can be seen in Longlegs, with the dolls inhibiting the fathers and driving them to releasing the repressed monster that hides within all men. This is a fairly simple, almost surface-level reading, and there are numerous issues with the Jungian analysis of Bluebeard, as well as applying said analysis to the context of works made without its knowledge. That doesn't mean we can't have a little fun, though. The conclusion of Cure sees Detective Kenichi reaching his breaking point, separating himself from his wife, and killing the escaped Mamiya. However, this violent act and a certain persuasive recording of a nameless messiah causes something to snap. He becomes the next missionary in order to cure the world. Hey, it's the title! His new goal becomes releasing the inner beast hidden within us all, helping us break free from society. We briefly get a shot of his wife murdered at the hospital before the final scene of the film, where he seemingly drives a waitress to violence. The monster within Kenichi is the one he tried to suppress his entire life, finally releasing itself onto the world, posing a question to the audience about their own suppressed predator. The end of Cure sees the monster win, and the worst of humanity taking control. While Kenichi has ended the life of one monster, he has released another upon the world. An ending that purports, the brothers and wife have killed Bluebeard, but what will happen to them now that they've tasted blood? Longlegs has a similarly cyclical finale. The titular Longlegs has released the monster that is Lee's mother, and the finale sees Lee driving to the home of her co-worker to stop her mother from killing another family. She saves the daughter of the family and stops an already berserk co-worker as well as her mother. But did she stop Longlegs? For those not in the know, he died like 30 minutes ago in the movie, bonked himself to death on a table. If we look at the imagery throughout the film, especially within the final act, we can see clear parallels between Lee and Longlegs. Her repressed memories are never fully elucidated upon, but there is an unsettling suggestion that there is more to Lee than we are initially presented. Lee's mother often inquires about her daughter's identity when talking to her on the phone.
Hi, Mom. Lee? Yep, still only me. Hi, Mom. Lee? Yes, still your only daughter.
Almost as if she's making sure the woman she is talking to is actually her daughter, still the one she knows. Longlegs speaks of Lee as though they have a personal relationship.
There she is!
And while this can be easily written off as the relationship between a predator and victim, we are shown that child Lee would calmly watch as Longlegs tied up and tortured her mother. This scene also has the most blatant appearance of Satan lingering behind her, a figure that is constantly seen throughout the movie following Lee. This all comes to a head when Lee's mother destroys the doll replica of her daughter, releasing a black fog from the doppelganger, an act that knocks Lee unconscious. All these elements suggest that Lee has her own dark fog, her own dark doppelganger. Whether there is an alternate Lee that is simply a traumatized child within her, or the literal embodiment of Satan all up in there is up to the viewer. However, it is common that many victims of abuse, especially children of SA, are prone to becoming abusers themselves and repeating the cycle. So in the film's final moments, when Lee kills her mother and saves the young girl, is she really free of Longlegs, or has she released a monster more horrifying than he could have ever hoped for? Find out in Longlegs 2 Longer Legs, coming to a theater near you summer 2026. So what of the titular question? Did Longlegs Ripoff cure? I think Kurosawa answered that best when explaining his inspirations during a 2012 interview for IGN. With Cure, there is a sociological element, but probably not because I studied sociology at university, but because I watched so many films, and those are the elements I learned from the films that I have seen. That's the process of making a film. It's not just to simply take what you have learned and put it into the film, but to actually put yourself in that situation, to think about it, and to put a posit as a possibility. That's what I feel making a film is about.
Attakai ka na, Okinawa. 美味しいものたくさん食べよう。あなた何食べたい？
ふみえ、沖縄に行くんじゃないんだよ。
ええ。
I'd like to thank my sponsor Blake Partridge for helping me make this video. If you'd like to support me to make more things, then please check out my Patreon at patreon.com/obliviousben. Interacting with this video in any way is also greatly appreciated. Blah 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 algorithm. Did you also hate Across the Spider-Verse? What a stinker, right?
Oh no!